want to talk about India now because you've warned that India could take decades to catch up with US and China. Tell me what structural reforms in those countries could either accelerate or delay India's catch-up timeline?
Yeah, look, I think most estimates of catch up require nothing to go wrong in India, and our pace of GDP growth increases by 1% or two, and that we do all the right things while everyone else stands still. And what you just indicated is they're not standing still. They are trying to improve the lot of their people. In the US, one of the big issues has been the amount of regulation that has come in over the years and is frustrating any kind of investment. And that, you're seeing in, for example, these Taiwanese chip factories that are being set up in the US. Again and again, you hear the complaint, oh, so much additional regulation here than in Taiwan, so that's why this is taking time. And what you have is a government in the United States that is very willing to tear up regulations. In fact, maybe overly willing to tear up regulations wherever it sees it, and is not going to do anything about the green transition, is not going to raise costs for industry, which may, be necessary for the longer run well-being of the planet. But that's what it's sort of taken up. And I think, in some industries it's helpful. In some industries it may actually be problematic. But that's to some extent, the Democrats also are seeing that maybe they should be on the side of the angels and not keep espousing additional regulations that slow down growth, because after all, slower growth means fewer jobs, and they want jobs for the people. So that's something that the U.S. is turning to, which may, in the longer run, be very, very beneficial for the United States. Um, in China, I think at some point they'll wake up to the fact that their model doesn't work anymore. It used to work, but it requires a fair amount of thought, which is happening, to see why it doesn't work anymore, and they need fixes. Of course, being a more authoritarian economy, it needs people at the top to change their minds, and that's harder than people broadly who see the consequences of these policies. But if China can fix its growth model and focus much more on the innovation, which is huge and plentiful in China, it could also reaccelerate, find new ways of growth. So I think the jury is still out in both countries. Both are looking inwards. And I think, India, from the recent reforms, is also looking inwards and trying to figure out how to up its rate of growth. Hopefully they play out, but it is something that's work in progress.
Right. Because you suggested that India could turn the US administration's reciprocal tariffs into a strategic opportunity by lowering its own tariffs. How can India ensure this doesn't lead to a flood of cheap Chinese goods rerouted through other markets?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, the world is now getting more apprehensive about Chinese goods coming in. And we have to be clever about it. I mean, one way of keeping out overly cheap goods is by letting our currency depreciate. Of course, there's only so much you can do that without inflation becoming a concern within the country, and without the middle class, which has lots of payments to be made in dollars for kids who are studying abroad, etc., rising up in arms and saying, "Why have you let the rupee cheapen so much?" And in India, it's become a political sort of fetish that the rupee cheapening indicates something wrong. That if the rupee sort of dollar exchange rate goes up, you must be doing something terrible. That's not necessarily true. And so many politicians have worried about the rupee dollar exchange rate going above their age. At this point, I think it's above all politicians' age. So I think we're beyond that controversy. But I think if you look at the real effective exchange rate of the rupee, It's just below what its long-term average over the last decade or so has been. So it's not overly depreciated at this point. I wouldn't worry too much, and I would let it find its level. Perhaps if a deal gets done on the tariffs, it will strengthen again. Of course, the rupee is affected not just by trade, but by investment. And if we can make India a better place to invest, if we can enhance prospects of growth, all those things would help the rupee recover more strongly. But again, I would say the rupee is one way we can actually make our exports more competitive. I would also want, I think I've said this in other fora, our businesses to get more ambitious. Too often they're happy sort of playing in the Indian market and trying to keep out foreign companies from competing with them domestically. Fortunately, I think the government is now opening up to more foreign companies into the Indian market so that our companies first get more competitive domestically, but then also can start looking abroad for markets. You can't be saying every time, "Oh, the domestic market is not working that well," but then look outside. Try and invest. I mean, you can't claim investment is weak because the domestic market is weak. No, the domestic market is not your only market. Look abroad and try and invest for the broader world. And this applies as much to services as it applies to industry, to manufacturing.